Yes,
Hare
Guru,
Krishna.
I'm here.
Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Usually,
Jai
the best way to do it is everyone put their computers on mute. Otherwise, we get a lot of cross communication. And then I don't know who's organizing the conference, but whether you've got a list of questions or devotees ask questions one at a time, and then you can just sort of join as you have the questions. Then it's nice and quiet otherwise in the background.
Guru Maharaj, Nima is kind of overseeing it, as in the technical side, but I think devotees just have questions. We haven't kind of got a list yet, but if they have, they just, whoever has.
Okay, well, if you, okay, I can see everyone. There's Varshana and company, and here's Ramananda and the Scottish devotees, Tourdardas, and Chaitanya, and Bhavri. Well, I see a window of something, and Nimai, and Naika, and Dilraj, Dandakrit, Rasik, Galaxy, Murli, and another Galaxy. That's, and I think, and then there's Dakshina, Rajakumar, and Shunita, and another Galaxy. Okay, well, I more or less, I can hear most people, but Gopal, Roy, there's some others just connecting right now. Lalita Saki. If you've got your cameras on, it's better, then we can see you. Otherwise, I won't be able to see anyone raising their hands. Okay. Well, that's who Sunita is. Okay. Great. First Zoom conference. Congratulations. 10 years down the road, you managed to do it. Anyway, I'm here in New Brajadam. You can probably see from the background. And just trying to work on preparing my presentation that I'm starting to do in a week on the 24 gurus or the 28 gurus. Croatia, and someone's banging in the background because they don't have their mute on, and so we're ready for any questions anyone may have. And I'm just on a diet of half water, half milk after my visit to UK. Anyone?
I think Chaitanya Leela has a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi Krishna, can you hear me?
If you yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Please accept my humble obeisances, Maharaj. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So I just had a couple of questions. One is about faith. What is, I was reading about the 6 symptoms of surrender, and I was wondering what is the result of someone who endeavors in devotional life, but at the end of their life may not have complete surrender or complete faith, but they have some medium level of faith, such as if they feel that Krishna is their sole protector, but they may not necessarily always in life, reject everything that's unfavorable for devotional service, and may not practice to perfection, I suppose.
Well, the quality or the nature of devotional service, as I mentioned, when I was at the Mandarin, I was shocked that no one knew what the basic criteria of bhakti was, that it was faith, is that your devotion, the quality of your devotion varies with the quality of your faith and knowledge, those two things. And generally, the understanding is that people will advance in spiritual life according to the measure of their faith. But I'm just fiddling around here to see if I can see everyone all at once, but it seems not. So the quality of faith. So generally speaking, if one does not have full faith, then he also won't have perfection, because you will only have love for Krishna when you have a very full and very deep faith in him. There are exceptional circumstances, and that is that if one is actually offenseless in chanting or other devotional activity, then one will develop bhava, but the consequence, and even if one doesn't have faith, the question is how you get to do something offenselessly or practice offenselessly without any faith. But if that's usually a very exceptional circumstance. So the general rule is that you need to have faith in order to advance in Krishna consciousness, in order to get. And if you don't, if one's devotional service is not complete, then Krishna explains. Then purva abhyasena tenaiva, then one takes another birth, or another birth here on this planet or on a higher planet, depending. Wow, I see Tarakanath and the great assembly of devotees there in Wales is also present. Hare Krishna. It's technology is great. This is what the type of things that Srila Prabhupada would really encourage, the use of technology. Whereas for most other things, it's really horrible. But in this case, it's excellent. Okay, someone else? Nimai, or you're the one who's calling the shots? Let everyone have one question at a time, because we're going for an hour on the outside.
Does anyone else have questions? No one's.
That's a question.
Hare Krishna Guraj.
Who's speaking? Where are you?
Wait.
Chudatma in Wales, yeah.
Okay. I got, I don't know if you've got as many boxes as me, but I've got 25 boxes here, and that's not.
We've got 4.
Couple of cases.
Go ahead, Wales. Achyutatma in Wales.
Hare Krishna Guraj. Just recently reading about when Bhishma Dev left this planet.
You're going to have to come a little closer to the computer.
Sorry. Recently reading in the first canto about Bhishma Dev leaving this planet. And obviously, when great personalities leave, there's always the assembly of the demigods and everyone showering flowers and all sorts of paraphernalia. Obviously, a great personality was Prabhupada, and I was just wondering, you know, was anybody present apart from, you know, the present devotees at the time, like the demigods, etc.?
It would take a great person to also see that. So to see the demigods, to see their activities, isn't necessarily immediately visible by ordinary people. And especially when devotees are leaving their bodies, about to leave their bodies, then my understanding and conviction is that there's a lot of things going on another level that is not immediately visible to devotees. It may be hidden from devotees, or it may only be visible to also very advanced devotees. So yeah, if we go by the example of Bhishma Dev, and there's other great devotees who are respected in different ways, either when they're leaving or even when they're alive, then such things would happen to personalities like Srila Prabhupada, but it may not be seen by everybody. So just like in the Krishna's disappearance, so it was described that when Krishna disappeared, ordinary people and even the regular dead actually really see his ascent. It was, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, just broke up a little bit then, but you're back.
I'm just going to connect on to my, we may get disconnected for a second. I'm going to connect onto my telephone because the internet is stronger. Okay, we're there, connected.
All good.
Okay, and so even they didn't see, even the demigods didn't see. Brahma and Shiva saw, but other lesser demigods see, and of course they're also devotees on the planet. And the ordinary people, they just saw that Krishna died and that he left behind a body. So it depends on the consciousness of the observers.
Thank you.
Okay, we got good. How many devotees are on the conference? Nina, can you see?
It says 28 individual people.
Fantastic. And then we've got
28 windows with lots of devotees, like Scotland are all together and Wales are all together, so it's more devotees.
Yeah, Chikori Radha's waving well. First time I've seen in a long time. Hare Krishna. Okay, great. Let's continue.
Anyone next? I think Ramananda was putting his hand up.
Okay, can you hear me, Gururaj? Yes. It was a question in two parts. It was about when we leave our body and we go to the planet where Krishna is performing his pastimes. So when we go to that planet, do some devotees go to the, well, one part of the question is, do some devotees go to the planet where maybe Lord Chaitanya is performing his pastimes? And when the devotee is on that planet, when they leave their body, do they die and leave a material body behind, or do they just go in that body that's become spiritualized back into Goloka Vrindavan with Krishna when they die?
Well, if someone has exclusive devotion either to Krishna or Lord Chaitanya, then that's where they go. if someone has inclusive devotion to both, then they will go in the spiritual world to both places, which is, as far as I can understand, only Lord Chaitanya's followers will have that, obviously, since, and I haven't read anything on what you say, but the idea is to actually develop devotion to Krishna. And my immediate inclination would be to say that, because that's what Prabhupada said, and Sanatana Goswami says, that you go to the planet where Krishna is. And then you mature your devotion. And when you attain perfection, then you go to the spiritual world. But it's an interesting topic. When you're in the material world, then you will always leave a body behind, even though that body has become fully spiritualized. Because that's the nature of the material world, is that you have to die and you have to leave a body behind. It's only in the spiritual world that people live forever. There was more to that question?
Well, just, does the body look like your constitutional body, or would you leave a human form behind and then attain a peacock body, or would you take birth as a peacock on the planet where Krishna is performing his pastimes? Would your body resemble your constitutional body?
Well, if someone is in that line, generally speaking, Lord Chaitanya's followers are either in one of the four relationships, and more specifically in friendship and conjugal relationship. Those are the relationships that Lord Chaitanya's followers more often than not practice. So they'll take a birth in that body, but it's a general principle, aside from Lord Chaitanya's followers, yam yam vapi smaram bhavam. You attain a body according to your aspiration in this life. So if your aspiration was that of the body of a peacock, then you would get the body of a peacock if you were already qualified for that. In other words, if you developed that stage of development, which mostly would take place. And but even there, as a peacock, you wouldn't immediately get the association of Krishna. You'd get trained up by other peacocks, the eternal associates, and then when you become trained by them, then you move on. So that's a relatively neutral position with a mixture of other relationships. Some parental and so on. But as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, our primary aspiration is to enter Krishna's Vrindavan Leela in human forms, and in Prabhupada says that in the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, either as followers of Lord Nityananda in a friendship mood, or as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a conjugal mood. Anything further on that?
I heard something, but I don't know. This devotee was saying that, say you're in the body of a young gopi, then one day Krishna kind of acknowledges you on the planet that you're being trained up in, and that's at the age that you would be at in your constitutional position, and then after that you age, relinquish that body, and then go to that age that you are. I guess it must vary as well.
Yeah. In the material world, the aging process is there. It's even there with Krishna. And that's a unique feature of the material world. In the spiritual world, then it's primarily a oops, what happened? Someone do something with I see some question over here, but I lost seeing everybody else.
Why?
Someone's fiddling around. Okay, well now I don't see anyone everywhere in the same way that I did before.
I think maybe someone shared their screen with everyone. I think that's what we can see.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, now it's back. So, and in the spiritual world, everyone has one's eternal age. Someone further in relationship to that same topic? No? Okay, go ahead.
I do, Guru Raj. Hi Krishna, it's Dakshina.
Mm-hmm.
My youngest daughter Ishvari, she's 7, and she's very, very attached to Varahadev, and she, has a picture of him on the altar, and she worships him, and she says that, when she goes back to spiritual world, that's where she's going. So obviously, like you said, that Prabhupada said, as devotees, we should aspire to go back to Krishna. So is that something I should not really, what would your advice be on that?
No, she'll grow up.
Okay.
She'll grow up, and then she'll understand, and her mood will most likely change. No, we should just encourage her in her devotion. I mean that devotees go through phases. Sometimes devotees start off as Ram Bhaktas or Nishingadev Bhaktas, and then later on, by reading and hearing, then their inclination matures. We're not Nitya Siddhas that our immediate connection or immediate attachment is an eternal attachment.
Okay.
So, but whatever attachment is there, that we should encourage, and that's what Srila Prabhupada did, and that's the Vedic process to encourage anyone's worship, and as they're in touch with Krishna consciousness, then they'll see things in a general way. Or if they're someone like Murari Gupta, who's Hanuman, then they won't switch their affection, but rather their affiliation will stay the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
We have Devarshi Prabhu and then Suchirani.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. First, I just wanted to say thank you for making time for us, and thank you to Nimai Sundar for making a nice arrangement. This is really very valuable time. My question was about, I was reading CC, Majji Leela Chapter 7, and it's when Lord Chaitanya is touring South India, and it describes how he was meeting different people and kind of giving them pure devotion, and they would go back home and give devotion to their whole village. And it describes that in this way, the whole of South India became liberated, and other statements to say that the whole world got liberated at that time. And I was wondering what it meant, what kind of liberation it's referring to, and how we could, if we were a historian and we look back in time, would we have been able to see the effect of that on the planet?
Well, Haridas Thakur continues, and he explains that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just like Lord Ramachandra, when Lord Ramachandra left the planet, then he took everyone with him back to Godhead. And but then, was the planet emptied? No, because automatically, simultaneously, everyone was, the whole planet was replenished. And by the workings of Krishna's Yogamaya, then it appeared that there may have not been any particular change. So once again, it's that thing that there's, on one side, there's more than meets the eye, and for different reasons. One is to protect the confidential nature of Krishna's pastimes, his appearance, the nature of bhakti, of devotional service, and also the other is to give non-devotees or materialistic people arguments to strengthen their position. And these are different reasoning that's given both in Shastra and also by Acharyas. And as far as what liberation means, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was here, well, Haridas Thakur says, you will also do the same thing. In other words, when Lord Chaitanya leaves, he'll also take everyone back to Godhead. And there it specifically says back to Godhead, not just liberate, which liberation can mean a lot of things. It can mean free people from their sinful activities. It can mean taking them back home, back to Godhead. And that's the special benefit of Krishna's incarnation or avatar. Is that things take place there. You get some special mercy because of Krishna's presence. That doesn't happen when Krishna's gone.
Thank you very much. I was speculating that it was liberating them from sinful reactions, which is why there would have been less change. But there are specific statements, as you said, that mean that people actually went back home. So if I could ask another question in relation to that, how does that affect the free will or the level of consciousness of those people if they haven't developed pure devotion, if they're not free from anarthas?
That's the Kripa Siddha. That's what causeless mercy is all about. Just overrides free will. They may not be advanced or may not even be practitioners in any way, but still they get the result. And that's a special thing. That's a special blessing. It may be that in terms of that reference that Kaviraj Goswami says some people became liberated. I'm referring to the one that Haridas Thakur says and Prabhupada's purport explains.
Thank you very much.
Okay, who else had?
Suchi Rani and then Gopal Rai Prabhu.
Okay.
I had a question about the first canto, chapter 10, or when Krishna was entering chapter 11. Satyavati, the daughter of the fisherman, was there, and she nearly fainted because she couldn't bear separation inspiration from the Lord. And I was just wondering that my understanding is that she had left to go to the forest before the Mahabharat war, because Vyasadeva had told her, you don't want to witness this. So in that sense, like, why does, if that's the case, then why does the Mahabharat and the Bhagavatam version of the same events differ so much?
I sort of missed the beginning part of what you were saying because it seemed like your internet wasn't so good and you were breaking up. But the essence in terms of distinction between Bhagavatam and Mahabharat, when it comes to philosophy, then Bhagavatam always dominates over any other type of philosophical version by any other scripture. And when it comes to chronology or pastimes, Bhagavatam is not so concerned with systematic presentation, and therefore it may sometimes talk about events either in a different way or in an earlier stage, or something that falls out of chronology as if it were chronological.
Yeah.
For instance, one example is the whole description of Lord Varaha, which is actually makes it sound like it's one story, but it's a merging of 3 incarnations of Lord Varaha. So, and that we find out from just the Acharyas who explain that, not from the Bhagavatam itself. Bhagavatam doesn't say this is going to be multiple incarnations described in one, but it sounds like one story or one pastime. So generally, Bhagavatam is not so concerned, although it's a Purana, it's not so concerned with the flow of history, but rather it's concerned with events, philosophical statement, Christian pastime.
Okay, thank you.
Unless it's actually making a statement. And Bhagavatam says, it happened like this at this time, then that's supersedes any other statement.
Okay, thank you. I had one other question, actually, if that's okay.
And then, of
it
course,
was about...
there's the other reasoning also that sometimes there are different stories that are being related to. Someone doesn't have their phone on, there's some background noise going on, they don't have their mute on. Okay, it stopped. Then there's the other thing of that it's a different time. In other words, a different narration, either of a different Mahabharata or a different incident. The pastime is not the same one as the one that the Mahabharata speaks about. Okay, what was the other thing in relation to that?
The other question, it wasn't in relation to that. It was just that, you know, the universal form, because we've just been going through Canto 2, it comes up again and again, and it's in the Bhagavad Gita. Why does the Bhagavatam discuss so much about the universal form if it's just imaginary and, you know, it's not really for us because there's easier ways to go back to Godhead?
There are different types of people who are approaching Bhagavatam, who are approaching Krishna consciousness. And some people have a very materialistic outlook, and they can relate to God being great. And they can relate to God in terms of what they see around them. And the universal form is just that. It's a description of Krishna's form in relationship to his creation, which in one sense is correct because everything is related to Krishna and there's nothing that's separate from Krishna. But at the same time, it's really nothing to do with his original two-handed or four-handed form. So it helps these people then accept that God actually has a form. And when they make that transition to accepting that he has a form that's made of matter, then by further purification, they can accept the concept that he actually has a spiritual form. So it's this progressive process of the Vedas, which elevates people through different stages. In the Bhagavad Gita, there's the yoga ladder, which elevates people according to their level of Krishna consciousness or their level of spirituality to come to the stage of accepting Krishna as a supreme personality of Godhead with a spiritual body, that he has a personality, and so on. Of course, all of this can be circumvented if someone associates with devotees and has faith in devotees' words. Then you just jump up through that. But very often, these people don't have that type of either faith or don't get that type of association or both. And therefore, it helps them make that kind of gradual progression.
Thank you.
Who was next?
Gopal Rai Prabhu and then Gadadhar Prabhu.
Hi, Krishna Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
I was wondering that when one leaves this body, if one is or wishes to continue the service of relationships that they've made in this world, in ISKCON, with the spiritual masters or different devotees, will one be able to continue these relationships in the future, in the spiritual world, or do we, Prabhupada said there'll be another ISKCON in the spiritual world, or will we meet up there?
Well, the ISKCON in the spiritual world would happen in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes in the spiritual world, where devotees play the role of sadhakas, and where they are sadhakas, in other words, although they're perfect devotees, but they're still in a role of devotees. They're not in Braj, but they're rather in Navadvip, and therefore, as associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they have gurus and Vaishnav association. The same will go on in the Krishna's abode, but there the relationships are different. The relationships aren't as guru, but rather as seniors who instruct juniors, and the relationships are as cowherd boy to a cowherd boy, as gopi to a gopi, as a elder to an elder, and so on. So it's different than the relationship that we have here. But in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastime, it's very similar. It's just that there the so-called sadhakas are not actual practitioners in the sense that they're still trying to advance in Krishna consciousness. They're perfected devotees, but they have the forms of practicing devotees. They dress like we do, and so on. Is that okay? They look like they got frozen over there.
So I guess what I'm asking is, so what are the chances that in the future and possibly for eternity, I will get to continue to serve, to serve you and to serve Tarkanath and these different devotees that I've become attached to. Yeah.
You're a glutton for punishment, aren't you? Well, we'll see. As Prabhupada says, we'll have a ISKCON there. So there are there's much less written about that Svetadweep than there is about Braj. In fact, there's very little. There's allusions to it, and then Jiva Goswami talks about it, mentions it, and some other Vaishnavas, Bhaktivinoda Thakur also mentions it, but they don't get into detail like we get into in Braj. But you could expect that it's a mirror image of Braj, and we'll see what type of relationships mature also in Vrindavan, who we're related to, what our groups are and subgroups, because that's there. In the spiritual world, everything's always grouped. Usually they're in groups of 8, and there's groups of 8 and subgroups in each person. So that is what very much resembles ISKCON. You know, we have a large society, and there are so many groupings amongst the devotees, whether it's geographically or organizationally. So whether it's with the same people or not, well, let's see if you can hang out for your whole life with Tarakanath first. Then you can go eternity. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam. That's the general law. Or as Narottam Das Thakur says, what I aspire for in my sadhaka form, then I will attain that same thing as a siddha. And the Bengali for that is, I'm just trying to see, that's in Prem Bhakti Chandrika. Sadhana bhavi boyaha siddha deha pabutaha raga patira esa upai sadhana yedana chai siddha he tahapai paka paka matre se vichar akape sada apaka sada niriti pakilesa prema bhakti bhakati lakshana tapasar. Whatever I think of during my spiritual practice, I will attain when I reach perfection. This is the means of spontaneous devotion. The treasure I desire as a practitioner, I will get when I attain my spiritual body. It's just a question of being ripe or unripe. The unripe stage is the stage of practice, and the ripe stage is the stage of pure loving devotion. That is the essential truth about devotional practice. Next.
Gadadhar Prabhu.
Can you hear me, Kumar?
No.
Okay, question I have is, can you say something about the month of Purushottam, and what did Prabhupada say, and is there a big difference between the month of Purushottam, Kartik, and what did the Gaudiya Vaishnavas do? How do we observe that? Because in the 12 years that Srila Prabhupada was present, he didn't say much about the Purushottam month, but there's a lot saying, so I just need your input on that, or advice.
No, we didn't. We hadn't even heard about it until after Prabhupada's disappeared. Not that it's not important. Month of Purushottam is like the month of Kartik, a special month, except it comes every 4 years rather than coming every year. And it gives also special blessings and special benediction. Greater emphasis is placed, at least from that which is directly related to Krishna's exclusive pastimes, to the month of Kartik. It's like Chaturmasya. Chaturmasya, the Prabhupada mentions in his books, but it was also something that we really didn't hear much, if anything, about in Srila Prabhupada's time. And I don't think I can remember that my having followed it at that time. So, but it's as far as I know, Purushottam is more of a Purushottamas is more of a general, followed by all branches of Vaishnavas or more branches of Vaishnavas. Kartik, while it's followed by others, but it's specifically the worship of Gaudiya Vaishnavas, especially how we worship it. I don't know of any unique Gaudiya method of following Purushottam Mas, but I'm not really very learned in it or read up on it either. But certainly there's never any harm in when people spin their computers around. It gets very dizzying for me, Maharani. There's no harm in following particular vows. They're always beneficial for Krishna Bhakti.
Thank you very much. Makes things a bit more clearer. A lot of people ask these questions about Purushottam Mountain. We don't know what to say, but thank you.
There's quite a bit on it that's available, and but it's not a compulsory fast. I don't think it's mentioned in Nectar of Devotion. Maybe Sanatana Goswami mentions it, but I don't know about Nectar of Devotion. So our main focus is we always want to do things that increase our faith in Krishna. And, or at least those devotees who, as we talked earlier, some people with Lord Varaha or Lord Narayan or other things. I remember, maybe, I don't know who's going to remember, maybe Gadadhar may remember, but way back when Sitaram, Lakshman, and Hanuman were installed, and unfortunately, someone paid for those deities. And I say unfortunately because I already paid for them once from Chicago. So we ended up twice for the deities. I'm sure the Murtiwala really liked that. I don't know why Jai Tirtha didn't. He knew that I ordered the deities and that they were there. But the person who sponsored them, he wanted to do Hanuman Chalisa. And I think they wanted to do it on a regular basis. And of course, they do that on Hanuman Jayanti, and I think maybe they do it for a week period, or I don't know. And then there was some controversy. Oh, we don't do anything like that. Prabhupada never said it, and so on. And it's a fact. It's not a Gaudiya Vaishnava practice. For us, we just always concentrate on Krishna, Shama Sundaram Achinta Guna Swarupam. But at the same time, there's no harm, especially when it comes to preaching. And we're preaching to such a broad range of people who come. That was really the purpose why Prabhupada installed Sitaram, Lakshman, and Hanuman in Mumbai, to bring people who worship Lord Ramachandra to Krishna, and that ultimately, to somehow or another, gradually make them Krishna devotees or Krishna bhaktas. So there's many things that, especially when you've got a really big Indian congregation, and they bring a lot of things from their tradition in. Some we may respect or allow to be practiced in our temples, just as something that increases other people's faith. It encourages them to participate in our devotional activities, because after all, they do a lot of things, like for instance, chanting Hare Krishna, that they weren't necessarily brought up with, but they do it because they respect our practices. And then some things, of course, Mayavadi things that we wouldn't do in the temple. So there are things that we may encourage people and instruct people in according to the level of faith. You have to preach to people according to where their faith is at, and you may not immediately be able to just lift them from one level of Krishna consciousness to another. And you may not be able to immediately shift their focus, their Ishtadev. Maybe it's from Lord Ramachandra or Lord Varaha to Krishna. It may take time, or it may not even be successful in this lifetime.
Thank you.
When is I'm just going to go to my calendar. When is our next conference? Today's the 2nd. And 2 weeks from now, I won't be able to do it because it's quite packed for me. And 3 weeks from now, on Saturday, I can't do it because... Oh, no, I could. I could do it 3 weeks from now. And I assume that Saturday or Sunday is the best time.
Yes, Guru, for the majority.
Is 3 weeks from now the 23rd?
Say that again.
Is 3 weeks from now you're referring to the 23rd?
It will be 23rd. Unless it's Friday. What about Friday evening?
22nd, did you mean?
Yeah, 22nd. Is that all right for devotees? 22nd, and I've just got this. I have this Zoom. So is that good? Friday 22nd?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. There's quite a few nods here and thumbs up, so I guess.
Okay, let me come back to here. Is anyone saying no? It's no good? Okay. So let's do that then. Every 2 weeks is good, but next weekend is 15th, 16th, 17th are too busy. 17th we have our Sangha, our Bhakta Sangha devotees from all over the Yatra, and Saturday I'm ready to engage. And usually Saturday is not an ideal day for me because when I'm in New Brajadam, because Saturday is sort of the only what we usually have evening kirtan. Today we didn't have it, but Saturday is usually when we do that. So Friday is a good time.
Friday's good generally for you, Guru Maharaj?
Huh?
Friday is generally good for you?
Friday 22nd. Well, when I'm not in New Brajadam, then Saturday may be good also for Budapest and possibly Sunday, because Sunday program's sort of over by that time also.
So on the 22nd, 6:30, same time, like 7:30 your time?
Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Our time's sort of up, and then so we'll be in touch on the 22nd. Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Vrinda ki jai.
Hello.
Leaving the meeting.
Wait, don't.